Pay attention. I want everybody to take one step forward. You're still at attention. Take one step forward. And put your right hand on your heart. And repeat your name. And the officer says, you are now property of the United States government.
Mm.
You are now the United States government's property.
Mm.
Oh boy.
It's the world.
What's going on, gang? Another episode of Welcome to the World here. I'm highly anticipated, very excited to have this gentleman that I'm with today. A lot of history here, and being Black History Month, I feel as though this episode is one of my most important ones. So we'll get right into it. We have Mr. Charles James Jr. here. How you doing, boss?
I'm doing very well.
So really quickly, Mr. James is a retired war veteran from the Korean War, correct?
Yes.
This man will also be 90 years old in September, correct?
Yes.
So he has one hell of a story, right? So we're going to get right into it.
All right.
You are born and raised in South Carolina.
Born in South Carolina, raised in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
All of my public schooling is in D.C.
So when you were born in South Carolina, from the time that you were born to the time that you moved in D.C., what did you remember? What were some of the most pivotal points in your life at that time?
I remember the first house that my parents living, and when my sister, I'm a year and 3 months older than my sister number one. I do have a sister. There was only two. I remember the first place that I lived, my parents and all, was on 206 Morgan Street in Washington, D.C. And I remember that very well. And I remembered some of the neighbors and some of the names that I heard, and I believe my father and mother on both sides were very instrumental in getting a lot of their kin people out of the South moved to Washington, D.C. on both sides, on my mother's side and my father's side. I remember when they came to D.C.
Right.
And they lived with my parents and us for a short while until they got placed it in their own place.
So you were born in 1932.
Yes.
Correct. So
yes.
At this point in time, correct me if I'm wrong, but slavery was over.
Slavery was over.
Slavery was over, but segregation
was still yes.
So what were some of the things that you've witnessed as a kid that kind of like opened your eyes without mom or dad telling you, like, listen, these people don't like us. This is what it is.
Well, in the block we lived on, Morgan Street, there was a Jewish store, but all the people in there on that street were all black.
Really?
Yeah. And there was a hospital at the end of the street named Homeopathic Hospital. My dad worked there. He operated an elevator. I remember that. And just looking back, I can't remember seeing any whites ever coming in that area.
Wow.
As I'm thinking back, I never remember that. Everybody that you on that street, everybody except the Jewish store that was there, Potash was his name, and that was it. But you didn't think anything about it.
Right.
It was just natural. My father took my sister and I, when we lived on Morgan Street, he took us to a drugstore right around the corner from where we live, and it was near a firehouse. And I didn't know what an ice cream soda was, a banana split, but my sister and I remember we sat at the counter, and that was a drugstore. And of course, there was no other whites or anybody else except the druggist who was there. He was white, but he served us.
Right.
He served my father. I don't know. That's what happened. All I know is my sister, at one time he took us, we had a Sunday. And I know a lot of kids that I grew up with at our age never experienced those things.
Right.
About an ice cream soda and a banana split and all that, but we did.
Right.
My father and mother took us and did things with us that a lot of the kids in the neighborhood, as growing up, starting school and all that a lot of kids were not exposed to. During World War II, my father took my sister and I to a display they had on the Capitol grounds between the monument and the Capitol. They had something called Back the Attack, and they were looking for civilians to back the attack because the Japanese and Russia both, I'm not Russia, German, had attacked the United States. And they had articles and things like that. But none of the kids in my neighborhood ever saw those things, but my dad, and my dad made sure my sister and I did. He definitely exposed us to a lot of things that I see a lot of other kids were not exposed to.
And you said something very pivotal, which is experiencing things that a lot of people you were around were not exposed to. Right. So can you explain to us, me and anybody else that will be watching this who is a black man or even a young man in America who is not exposed to today, which would be the draft? That is how you ended up in the war.
Yes.
So can you talk about that time and what were you expecting when you turned 18 and you were now told that you had to go to war? You had no option, and it was like, what the hell? Are you serious?
Well, it's a lot of if I can use the word insidious, it's sort of soothed and slippery. It eases in. You find yourself in a situation not abruptly,
right,
but gradually. And when it comes in like that, you're not so much aware. Now, in school, we never talked about, though my father's brothers were in the military and all that, but I never thought of how did they get in the military, what this, I never thought about it. But when it got to the point, after going through elementary school, junior high school, and then high school, and when it got to high school, they started telling the boys that in a segregated system, that at 18 you must register for the draft at the local board. The local board was the one that I was at, was number 14. I remember that to this day. As a matter of fact, I may have some information in here about that. And when you get the, so I'll register. It wasn't important. You just registered.
Right.
I mean, and in your mind, my mind wasn't set, and yet still, I didn't know that much about the war as far as knowing that the war, the military was segregated. Even the schools that was segregated, I wasn't so set on that.
So the military was segregated back then?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I had my uncles and all that was in the military. They were in black units. There was no black and whites all mixed up together.
I would have thought so. If you guys are fighting together, why not?
That didn't happen until the Korean conflict. The year that I got drafted, way after all this, and after I was drafted, they do bring you in to take an examination.
Okay.
Then they classify you either 1A or 4F.
Oh, okay. Do you know what those classifications meant?
1A mean that you were fit.
Okay.
4F mean that you had something wrong with you physically, mentally, or whatever. 4F.
Gotcha.
You failure. That F stands for
Fail.
Not fit. And still, even though you saw that, I saw that. That didn't mean nothing to me. 1A. Well, they say when you got your notice and it had 6 sticks and A's was on all of them, that means you were fit for the draft. And you still didn't pay. And one day I got a letter saying you were being drafted and you have to meet at your local board, 14, and it gave the date and it gave the time and it told you to bring this letter, and it was something else, and be on time. See, that was the other thing that bothered me. When you went to the draft board, you were told you were sent a letter. Uncle Sam needs you. Will you be The letter, I wish I'd have kept a copy of the letter.
I know it's like the Uncle Sam and he's pointing at you like this.
Yeah,
We
had all, yes.
That was in I've seen that in our schools and our textbooks and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I'm remembering what you're talking about.
But see, I heard some black comedians during my time say, I ain't got no uncle named Sam. My uncle's name is Jerry.
Yeah.
And the guy said, don't you want to fight for your country? Guy said, I don't want to live in the country. I live in the city.
Yeah.
I've heard things. It was funny, you think about it. But anyhow, it wasn't really serious until a certain point after I got out of the high school. I was doing something else and I got this letter.
Mm-hmm.
I was 20 years old. But let me state this and let me be exact. It always seemed unusual to me that you were legally or could legally be drafted as an adult, but yet still you were not an adult according to the standards. And that thing still persisted until a few years back here, not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Even the guys that go now voluntarily and all that, but you can volunteer at 17 and 18. But legally in certain places, you're still going to be carded. You're not 21, they're not going to serve you today. So those were some concerns, but that's bygone now because I wasn't a drinker and it never bothered me.
What are some other things that you would say did bother you while you were in the military?
I wasn't used to moving on somebody else's time.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get into the service, and they have what they call an induction. Everybody in there, they when you reported and they check your records to see you were who you were supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
They stood everybody up and line you up in lines.
Mm-hmm.
And you was standing there at an attention. They told everybody, pay attention. I want everybody to take one step forward. You're still at attention. Take one step forward. And put your right hand on your heart. And repeat your name. And the officer says, you are now property of the United States government.
Mm.
When you took that step forward, that was an induction step. And when you did that and you gave your name, they had you. They tell you, you are now the United States government's property. And you had no say. I mean, they said your meals, you will have 3 squares a day. You will have a place to stay, and you will under the commands of the United States government, Army.
And how did that make you feel as a person?
I'm puzzled.
Yeah.
I'm puzzled. I'm into something now
Right.
that I really have
No choice in.
no choice.
And now you're property of the United States.
Property of the United States.
When they
The
already had this plan in place to make you their property once you turn
Yes,
18.
yes. We will take care of you. You will have a place to stay. You'll have eat. You'll have your medical and all that vision and all that will be taken care of. You are property of the United States government. Oh boy. And the thing about it, I can laugh about it now, but at that time, at 20 years old, and then when you look back on it, you're not thinking, I'm not in the same frame of mind
Right.
now that I was then, but then you still didn't have any choice.
Did at any point in time, did you feel like you weren't going to make it back alive?
No, I guess that was the simplicity and the simpleness of being a young person. Because I was actually, once you go through basic training and all that, everybody doing the same thing, everybody eating together and all that. Even when they put us on a boat after being in Seattle, they gather you up. I knew one thing after taking basic training. They send you to an area. There's a troop movement, they call.
Okay.
You've got your papers on you and all that. You meet the troop movement. After they give you a few days home with your parents and all that and so forth. and realized that all your civilian clothing and everything was long taken and sent back to your homes anyway. And so now you got all military clothing, shoes, ties, shirt, underwear, everything. And you realize then by that time that you were really military property. And you were under their control. You can't just stay up all night long in those barracks. When the lights are put out, they're out. And you begin to slowly, surely but slowly, you begin to realize those things, and that you are not in control. They are in control, the government. And they have people that have ranks and everything. They are the ones that lead and guide you. And you begin to take all that in, and gradually it become a part of you. You learn to move with that.
Are you able to talk about in detail the things you've been through in war?
Yeah, I can. I can.
I don't want to ask you like everything, but
No,
just a couple of things
there's
that's been on my
things.
mind. Have you ever killed a man?
No.
Okay.
But I have seen people that were killed. I have seen people that life was taken that happened on a battlefield.
Right.
I've seen both the enemy, and I have seen people that were part of the United NATO that were. Yes, I'll tell you about a few things that I saw that happened. There were some of them were accidents, and some of them were intentional. First of all, what happened after induction and training and everything, they get you prepared, learn how to handle the weapons, and you're wearing the outfit, they're wearing military clothes. You have both dress clothes and you do have work clothes, and you get all that. You go through all that, and they let you know. And they do have work times and so forth. And a shipment, when you're on a move, when they're shipping you, you are still on the government's time, because the troop train that we met it in Chicago. All of us were in that group, and when you board that train, they fed you and everything, just like they said they would, but everybody was under the command and the ownership of the United States government. I was in the Army. So the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, and all that. It's the same thing. You're under the United States. Insurance coverage, if you had gotten hurt or if your life was taken during that time, you still get an allotment for being in the military. I think they had a $10,000 insurance. Everybody was covered with a $10,000 insurance. Each individual.
$10,000.
$10,000.
$10,000 today.
And then you had, but then see, you had to write who the beneficiary either was, if the fellow was married, or if he was coming from his home with his parents and all. You list the person who was a beneficiary of your policy. Yeah.
Do you have an idea at all, like what would $10,000 be back then compared to today? Maybe like
$10,000. $10,000 individually. I don't know, because
maybe milk at that. If you want to just compare, like
you know what a quart of milk cost back then?
What?
A loaf of bread was 9 cents.
You lying?
9 cents for a loaf of bread.
For real?
15 cents for a quart of milk.
I think a small Stroman right now running for like $2 maybe.
A loaf of bread then was 9 cents. A soda pop. That's another thing. During the era when I was a child and up to even going to the service, you could buy a soda pop for 5 cents.
5 cents? 5 cents. A can of soda right now is like 75 to 95 cents.
Well, all that has changed.
Yo.
5 cents.
I want to go back just for that.
Yes. And matter of fact, I noticed this in bars when they were serving beer, and even with sodas, they had bottles that were collectibles. And we used to go, when I was a kid, we used to go back and find the soda bottles and turn them in. You get 5 cents a bottle, man, for turning a bottle.
That's a can of soda.
A beer bottle, you get a little more for beer bottles because it was brown glass.
Right.
and green glass, but all of those kind of things. At least you could collect enough. I remember my wife and I have talked about it. It only cost me 11 cents to go to the movie. Until I got to be an adult. At an adult, it was about 25 cents. I stayed that way for a long time.
11 cents to go to the movie nowadays. Right now, it's about $11 to $15. I wait till Tuesdays. You got the $5 Tuesdays. That's when I go to the movies.
No kidding. There's a lot has changed from that time until now.
Yes, sir.
And the other things, learning to be at 20 years old, transforming to become an adult. Whether you wanted to be or not, you were placed into the adulthood because we assumed that everyone going was an adult man. But as I say before, still on that identification card, it has on there minor. The other thing was that you had certain responsibilities. You, if you were approached while you're in that uniform, if you approached an officer or such, you had to salute. That was the other thing. Everybody.
That doesn't happen today?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Or if you're an enlisted man and you're not an officer, even the officers, if they come before a junior officer, come before a senior officer, he salute. Yes. And of course, the officer returned it and
Right.
all that. There were just certain things you had to become acclimated to, and that's the way you operated.
When you came home from the war, how were you received?
Oh, my people were glad to see me. That's what you call mustering out of the military the service. There's a certain procedure. You bring it into a center, a mustering out center, which was Fort Meade, Maryland. We were brought into the area nearest to where you were inducted from to dismiss you from the military. You don't get actually out of the service unless you've been a professional soldier. You will get a discharge. But we got a separation certificate. We still was on call for another, I forgot how many more years you were on call.
Were you ever called back?
No, but they do. That's why they give you that separation, because if a war breaks out again after they dismiss you,
Right.
they can call you back.
Call you back.
Yeah.
Got you. Any after effects from the military?
No, only thing I can tell you about on the lines of that, when you get separation, and on your separation, after you go through that, it's a period where you go through about 5 years. After you get over that, then you will get another certificate saying that you were honorably discharged. If you don't have that, you can't receive any veteran benefits.
So what is one way that you can be dishonorably discharged?
If you get a court martial,
Okay.
if you get a court martial, a general court martial, which is certain things you do, like leaving your post of duty, and they have to come to find you and all that. Those things could get you a dishonorable discharge.
And do you get any warnings? Is it like, or is it just where you weren't there, you're done? It's just one time, or you may get like a warning.
No, you don't get no warning. You get you have a court. They bring you to court.
Right, they bring you to court.
There is a movie, if you ever get a chance to see it, it's called A Few Good Men.
I've heard of it.
One fellow who was at the high school I went to, he is the judge. They call him a provost marshal. In that picture, his name is James Preston. He and I went to high school together. He was a little older than me. Well, he's graduated from high school before me. But if you ever get a chance to see that picture, A Few Good Men, they were in the Navy and the Marines. And another thing about it, the Marines come under the Navy. It's a corps. The Marines is a corps that's under the Navy. And that's what happened in that thing. Those fellas, two fellas that got court-martialed, they followed the commands of the officer, and yet still they got blamed. They got court-martialed, and when they finally court-martialed them, they lost their honor. As
For following the command of a higher command.
Yeah, well, you
higher
lose.
Authority.
You are a veteran, but your
Right.
life is no good to you now because you're dishonorably discharged. You can't
Wow.
you can't say, well, I'm a veteran. And the first thing I wish I might pull something. I'll show you a form after we get through here. There's a form in W212, I think. The first thing across there is honorable discharge. If you get one that says dishonorably discharged, you might as well put it in the trash someplace because you can't get any benefits, any recognition, or anything. I don't care if you spend 5, 10, 15, or 20 years in the service. If you get a dishonorable discharge, it's detrimental to you.
I believe it.
Yeah. So I have an honorable discharge, and I was glad to come home when my mom, and that's another thing. I got a duffel bag now. You come home with the duffel bag, everything you own, all the clothing they gave you, shoes, boots, and socks, and all that, and the clothes on your back. And when I got home, man, and as fast as I took those off to get into some civilian clothing, but you still carry that card with you because, as I say before, when they dismiss you or muster you out, you still got 5 years as a civilian to go through because if a war or anything comes up, they can bring you back within that time. That's the way it's set up. I don't know whether it's still that way.
Right. I'm sure it is, but you were blessed enough to not be called
Oh,
that,
yes, my
and
Lord.
That's
Yes,
good.
yes.
So let's talk about life after war up until where we are today.
Oh.
You've met, you've shook hands, you've interacted with a plethora of people who are famous,
yes.
influencers.
Yes.
Could you just talk about some of those?
Yes. Personally, I've shook hands with certain people. Dr. Martin Luther King, that book I was telling you about, I got that book over there, by the way. I went to a school that showed us how the generators work, how to take one that's been running. They don't run those one generator over and over and over producing electric. They have a way of putting another generator, coupling it up to that generator. You bring it to the same speed of the other one, and then you drop the one out that's been running for so many hours,
Gotcha.
and the other one is taken over. I learned how to do that, and of course that's a generation stations.
Right.
And what else did I learn? Something about how electric motors operate and all that. I learned to rewind and all that. And from that stage, I worked for another man who was a general contractor, and I worked with him for a number of years. We worked in very important buildings in the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, where they made the money in D.C. I've been in that building. I've been in the Federal Reserve building, and there's another building that has something to do with the monies and all that. And the main post office in D.C., Roy M. North. I've been in that building because of the contract that I work. You have to have, they will search your records, you have to have papers because you wear a tag every time you go in those buildings. So you're there. And I think along that time, I think I bought my first car. I bought an MGA, a two-seater. That's the one I was telling you about. We're going to Newport, and different things there. And that led us up into 1957, 58, and getting up around 59 is when I met my wife. I mean, not knowing that. And we got married in 1960 here in Norristown at Siloam Baptist Church. Then after that, I think sometime after that, we were able to buy this house. We've been here for a long time. We've been here for I don't know how many years, but we've been here for a long time.
So clearly, then you have a plethora of history in this town since you've been here.
Oh, yes.
Since the,
Oh, yes.
Okay, but before we go there, I want to very selfishly go back to the moment that you met Mr. Dr. Martin Luther King.
Oh, that was in the 60s. We met him before the March on Washington. I have that book over there called Stride Toward Freedom. My cousin belonged to a church in D.C. at 9th and P Street Northwest, Shiloh Baptist Church, one of the historical churches in D.C. And Dr. Martin Luther King, I don't know, I know how we found out that he was going to be a speaker there. He was going to be a speaker. We thought a speaker, but he actually preached a sermon. Most people have heard him as speaking has been an orator. He would speak, but we heard him preach a sermon. And after the sermon was preached and dismissal and so forth, we were permitted to meet with him downstairs at the church to shake his hand and so forth. He had a book on sale called Stride Toward Freedom. I have an autograph of his, and I was able to shake his hand. I shook his hand, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And my wife did too. Since then, even when they had the reenactment of the March on Washington, my wife and I went back and attended that.
Yeah.
And we even have some pictures. I got some pictures somewhere or another because some people took pictures of us, and we have the picture along the mall. The mall is between the Capitol and the monument, that body of water.
Yeah.
Now, when I was a kid, when I was a Boy Scout, I forgot to tell you about that. We used to sail, my scout leader took us down there. We used to sail our boats on those.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I've had some wonderful experiences and met some wonderful people. Met a lot of people here in Norristown. There's one thing about the politics here in Norristown. I am the first black electrical contractor to have license, and you've got to have insurance to get licensed. And I am the first one. Now, there are others now, but I was the first one to get
I
licensed.
told you guys he's the first electrician in Norristown.
Yeah, first
Black
first
man.
licensed,
First licensed black electrician in Norristown.
Yeah,
Mr. Charles James Jr.
yes,
Did they call you CJ?
yes. I have some things here. I have my credentials here, all of that license and all. I even have the license out of D.C. When I came here, I had a license from D.C. that I was a journeyman. I had already.
Awesome. What we got next?
And this one was out of the borough of Norristown. I think this one, Conshohocken. I had to have license in Conshohocken.
Got it.
And I think, where's this one at? This one is... No, this is District of Columbia. But I do have one where I had license in Norristown also.
Got it.
Yeah. This, you might want to get a picture of that.
What's this right here?
When I was in Korea.
So this is you on the bottom right.
Yeah, on the bottom right, I was a corporal, and I was the senior wireman of that group. There was only one other corporal there. There's one tall fellow there.
Mm-hmm.
No, the one holding the dog.
Mm-hmm.
The one holding the dog. He was a corporal also. We were the highest ranking in that group. That was in a battle zone. Yeah, that was in the wintertime. So I got a lot of other slides that I have, but I'd have to go and turn them out. But I have a lot of pictures.
Mr. James, I just want to say thank you for your service first and foremost. Thank you for your contribution to not only Norristown but the whole world, protecting us as much as you could have, and doing the things that you've done, meeting the people that you've met to bring you along to the place that you are now, to become the first licensed electrician in this town, and to service people for water dams or generators or whatever the case may be. You've done it all. So, Mr. Charles James Jr., everyone, thank you so much for your time, sir.
All right.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Welcome to the world.
Yes, sir.
We out here.
If you ever, I better show you. If you want me to show you that book, I'll let you look at it while you're getting your stuff up.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Don't let this book out of the house. Wait a minute. Don't let it out. I had it one time, but I realized the seriousness of it.
That's his writing.
No, that's my wife's writing.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll show you his. I'll show you his signature. That's his signature.
Wow. Can I see the cover?